Good day, I'm John Fernandez. Welcome to this special edition of eNewsline Live. Today we will discuss with one of the management education industry's most experienced deans the critical success areas for effective business school leadership in a challenging global environment. We will also explore AACSB International's leadership needs and the process to select a new president and chief executive officer for 2015. We are honored to welcome Jan Williams, Dean Emeritus of the University of Tennessee at Knoxville College of Business Administration and Chair of the AACSB CEO Selection Committee. Jan has served in several leadership roles within AACSB, including Chair of the Board of Directors and also Chair of the Committee on Issues in Management Education, Accreditation Coordinating Committee, and Accounting Accreditation Committee. As chair of the CEO Selection Committee, Dean Williams serves an important role that will influence the future of AACSB and lead efforts to achieve its global mission. Dean Williams' knowledge and experience as a business school leader make him well-positioned to discuss the attributes of effective leaders in management education, as well as the search for the next CEO of AACSB. Jan, welcome to ENL.
Well, thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here today. I look forward to this discussion. I think it'll be interesting.
We all do. Well, as you know, last fall I announced that I'd be retiring from AACSB as CEO in the spring of 2015 after 3 terms, and it's been wonderful. But now we're here to announce the search for the new CEO has officially begun. And Jan, I looked at the position description that you and Kim and others have written, and it was so exciting. I just wanted to ask, can I unretire?
Well, that's a possibility.
We're only kidding, but it really is an exciting position description. I think it was extremely well written, and I encourage all of you, not now, but I encourage all of you to look back at the position description and see if you're the right candidate or you know someone that that would make a good CEO of AACSB, and encourage them to apply. So Jan, we're going to start with some questions that really focus on more of business schools and to some extent AACSB, but what it takes to be an effective business school management education leader in this somewhat mercurial environment that we're going through. And then later on, we're going to talk specifically about the CEO search. And I know everyone is anxious to hear that. So let's get into the first question. Outstanding leadership skills are necessary for becoming and effectively serving as a business school dean in today's turbulent management education environment. With over 13 years experience as Dean of the College of Business at the University of Tennessee, Knoxville, you're regarded as a highly effective leader. Could you provide us with some background on how you became a dean and share with us the skills you found to be most valuable in becoming successful in that role?
I never had a goal of administration, of being an administrator. So the first half of my academic career was in completely non-administrative positions, you know, as faculty member, and never really gave too serious a consideration of becoming a dean. My movement into administration was kind of evolutionary, I guess, at the university where I was already on the faculty. And an opportunity arose. I was asked to take the position, in some ways almost drafted into the position by a faculty group, and chose to say yes and do it. As I look back on it, I view it as an opportunity to have a significant impact above and beyond what I would have been able to have as a non-administrative faculty member. So I have no regrets whatsoever of having spent approximately the last fourth of my career in a major administrative position, Dean of Business School. Now, the second part of your question was, what are the skills? This is difficult. I thought a lot about this, but I'm gonna mention 4. And if you ask me the same question on a different day, it might be 4 different items. But I'm gonna mention 4 that I think are really important. One is I'll describe briefly as collaboration or gaining consensus. The academic environment is a unique environment. and faculty members, especially faculty members, have a tendency to be pretty independent people. In fact, I think the fact that you can be independent is one of the attractive things about an academic career. And figuring out how to collaborate and gain consensus among a large number of really bright people is a real skill. I'm not exactly sure how you get it, probably through experience, but I think the ability to collaborate and gain consensus is really important. The second one I would mention is developing the ability to assess the talent you have and put together a leadership team that will allow you to collaborate and gain consensus. Most deans of business schools have the opportunity to appoint people close to them, kind of their immediate reports, associate deans and others. And I think being able to assess the talent you have access to and mobilizing that talent into a team is real important. I think a third one is being organized. It's a big job. You got lots of things going on at the same time. And this may seem a little contradictory, but I think you need to be organized, but at the same time have some flexibility. You kind of never know exactly what's going to happen, even on any given day. So you have to be able to be flexible and maybe move in a direction that 8 o'clock in the morning you didn't expect to go that day. And last, I don't know exactly how to describe this, but I'm going to call it a sixth sense. Ability to determine when to do what. You know, how fast do you need to, when do you need to speed up, when do you need to slow down, when do you need to do something, when do you need to not do that and delay that is real important. And if you have too restrictive a game plan and aren't flexible, I think that can affect your overall effectiveness. So collaboration and consensus building, assessing talent around you, being organized, and the sixth sense of knowing what to do when. A little bit unusual, a little bit soft descriptions, but I think they're really important characteristics.
I have to echo, I think they're very wise suggestions. After 13 years of our new Dean Seminar, I can say that probably the majority of individuals that become deans are the consensus choice of their colleagues, both from the standpoint of their ascension to department chair and also to dean. And it becomes what is called the accidental dean, as Al Spritzer has coined it. The other points about building consensus and the points about organization, two things. The building consensus is so critical if you're moving from particularly a business career into academia, as so many have these days. I think it's kind of known a little bit more intuitively by academics. And then thirdly, it's such a different job. It's such a different job than being an effective teacher and researcher that the organization element is very key. So I agree 100%. I think that's a wise suggestion. So how has the role of the dean changed over the past decade? What are some of the key challenges and responsibilities of a dean today that may or may not have been so critical in the past?
Well, I'm going to mention three things. Again, this list could probably go on and on. We could spend the remainder of our time on that one subject. But there are financial challenges facing deans of business schools today that simply weren't there or weren't nearly as strong as they were 10 or 15 years ago. And I think that is a characteristic today, and that is simply reflected in reduced support from state or other government organizations, and basically the requirement of deans and business schools in general to be more responsible for their own financial well-being. I think that's a major change that has occurred. I think another change that has occurred and will continue to occur is the expectation that business schools will be more collaborative with others on campuses. More and more I hear deans talking about the dual programs they have with other fields, and just simply the expectation that they become a leader on their respective campuses, more than just leading the business school, but becoming a part of a larger leadership group for the entire university. And then I'm going to mention something I'll probably say more than once today, and that are three themes that permeate the 2013 accreditation standards. And those are innovation, impact, and engagement. These are big challenges. These are really big challenges. If you think about that, the expectation that business schools will be innovative, that they will do work that has an impact, and that they be engaged. That's a significant formula to carry out, I think, as a leader of an academic unit.
Yeah, I think it's the right things to do. It is a hard time. I look at AACSB and its membership. I'm talking about specifically when I came in 2000, and then now it's a much more complex environment for deans. And as Jan has suggested, if you have that right stuff, I think your chances of success are certainly much greater. How has AACSB played a role in your success as dean? How do you think involvement with the organization can help one become a better dean?
Well, to me, the sort of the backbone of AACSB is peer review. It is a peer review system. And if a person is willing to be actively involved in peer review on both sides of the table, that person is subject to review and is willing to be a peer reviewer, the value is unbelievable. And in my years being actively involved in AACSB, the peer review process has put me directly in contact with and allowed me to get to really know well an enormous number of successful deans at other schools. And boy, they've modeled all kinds of behavior that have been helpful to me. In most cases, these are positive behaviors. In a few cases, I've seen some negative behaviors, but there's learning from that as well. You learn from both. But the whole peer review process and the ability to become as involved as you can through AACSB with deans all over the world is really a major contribution to my career that I have to attribute directly to AACSB. Second thing that I would mention is when a dean leads his or her school through an accreditation review, whether it's an initial one or a continuous improvement review, there's huge benefit to the school and to the individual dean of doing that. There are challenges in doing that, and it's even frustrating at times. But to go from start to finish through an accreditation review and a successful completion of that is, I think, a major accomplishment. Now, we could do the bits and pieces of an accreditation review without accreditation. We could bring a peer review team in independent of accreditation, but I don't know that we would ever do the comprehensive review or be able to attract the caliber of talent that we can through AACSB accreditation. So it's a really tremendous opportunity to look at your institution really carefully every 5 years. And with a team of experts doing that I think are unparalleled. Think about the last peer review team we had at the University of Tennessee. It was just an outstanding team, and we learned a lot from that process. And then the last thing I'd mention is simply learning how to work within and through a volunteer organization, which AACSB is essentially a volunteer organization, has been really valuable to me as a dean. So AACSB has played a really important role for me and for my school.
Management and higher education in general are seeing a number of transformations significantly impacting the industry, from decreases in public funding to increased use of technology. How would you characterize today's business education environment, and what would you consider the biggest challenge or challenges that most business schools and deans face?
Well, it's a very challenging environment. There's no question about that. I'm going to mention 5 major challenges I think we face. I'm going to do this briefly. One I've already mentioned, and that's the financial pressure. And I think more and more business schools are expected to kind of pay their own way and to do things that will kind of enhance their financial future, but not expect that to come automatically from the university. Globalization is a major challenge Every school is involved or should be involved in globalization. Every business school should be. Exactly how that plays out, I think, is different at different institutions, but I think globalization would certainly be on the list of top challenges. Technology is a huge challenge, and that includes both staying up with the latest technology, but also how we use technology in the delivery of education and then in the content of courses, and having our graduates leave the university with appropriate technology skills. Faculty hiring, retention, and rewarding faculty is a continuing challenge. We're aware of shortages. I don't think that's going to go away anytime soon. And I'll go back to the accreditation standards again that emphasize impact and engagement. We have not always put the same, attached the same importance to doing work that has an impact or being engaged with business as we are currently and will in the future. So I think a real challenge for deans is to kind of mobilize their faculty in such a way that their schools do, in fact, have impact and are actively engaged with business and other organizations.
Deans today simply must be change agents and their team surrounding them. And I know it's especially difficult in a traditional academic environment. So it's a real challenging job. Well, let's talk for a while now about a different job. That's my job, or what it's going to be. We're going to talk now about the selection process, some of the attributes that are being sought for the new CEO of AACSB. So Jan, please share with our audience an overview of what the AACSB search process entails, the role of the CEO selection committee, and the expected timeline.
John, I'm going to digress just a little bit. I want to answer that question in just a minute, but I want to say a couple of things first. You've done an incredible job of transforming AACSB. The organization today is significantly different and better than it was when you became the AACSB CEO. I'm really fortunate, I think, that my career as a dean overlapped almost perfectly your time as AACSB CEO. I think I became the dean at the University of Tennessee, and you took the position at AACSB about the same time. And so as my roles in AACSB have expanded, they've been right at the heart of the time that you've been the CEO of AACSB, and I consider that a really good thing. Now, having said that, basically you've made the challenge that I've been asked to lead really difficult. It's just a hard act to follow. We have a real challenge as a selection committee here. This is going to be, we already know this, it is a difficult task that we have in front of us, but I know on behalf of lots of people, I want to thank you for the leadership you provided over the last 15 years. It's a hard act to follow. We're going to work hard to find the right person to do that, but thanks for the time you spent making AACSB what it is today. It is a dramatically different organization than it was in the year 2000.
Well, thank you, but I'd say that it takes a village, and we've all worked very hard. Volunteers, staff, our leadership up through this day has been outstanding and kept us in alignment towards what I think is a very exciting, right mission that's been in place for quite some time.
Okay, you specifically asked about the process. I'm going to break it into two parts, kind of what we've done to date and what will be done in the future. We're casting a very wide net, and what I mean by that is we're looking in a very broad number and types of places for candidates who might be the best person to lead AACSB in the future. The first visible step that was taken was about a year ago, maybe a little less than that, when we sent out a research for proposals to search firms. And I believe it was in June, we had interviews with 3 firms and selected Diversified Search as the search firm that would assist us in this process. The current chair of AACSB, Bob Sullivan, appointed a selection committee, asked me to chair that, and I agreed to do that. It has 12 members. It is a real diverse group that significantly, I think, represents the membership of AACSB in terms of types of schools, backgrounds of the various members of the committee, geographic location. It's a good, diverse group. we began in the fall, in the early fall, gathering input from multiple sources. Lots of individuals have weighed in and said, here's our view of the CEO position. I think remarkable that we have had 23 stakeholder sessions. Now, how did we do that? Well, we did that primarily by having a session. I think a pretty good description, a listening session, where the representatives of the selection committee listened to our stakeholders at every meeting or conference where multiple AACSB schools came together. We looked at every opportunity to do that. There were 23 times we did this. And anytime there was a conference or any kind of meeting, we found an opportunity to get before either the entire group that was there or a subset of that group and have discussions with them about the CEO search. We did that 23 times and got just a tremendous amount of information. A lot of it repetitive, which is good because there's a lot of commonality in these discussions. We've now placed 7 print and online ads. Those are actually going live virtually as we speak, and are in the early stage of receiving applications. So that's kind of what's been done to date. Going forward, we'll continue to receive applications and then seek out individuals that are recommended or thought to be good potential candidates. There will be a narrowing down of that candidate pool with an important date being in August, when we hope to have narrowed that down to some smaller number. I'm a little reluctant to put a number on it because we simply don't know exactly what we're going to get. But let me say this: a one-digit number.
Okay, it's fair.
Probably 9. 8 or 9, something like that. And then we would go through what are commonly referred to as airport interviews. These might actually be at an airport. I think we're actually looking at an airport location for that. In November, to narrow down even further, a smaller number of finalists then would be invited to come to AACSB and would be here at AACSB in December, and a decision of the selection committee then in December, with the anticipation of the board appointment of that individual in January. So that's basically the timetable. And then that would give us in a 4 to 5 month period for transition, with your departure planned for, as I understand it, about the end of April.
Well, I'm only 9/10 of a mile away, so he or she can always give me a call. So I'm happy to help. Is there anything particularly unique about this search process?
Well, I'm told that 23 kind of listening sessions is really unique.
I think so,
that's what the individuals with the search firm have said, that they've never seen anything quite like this. One of those sessions was with the Business Practices Advisory Council, and they said the same thing. They said, we've never really seen a search quite like this, where you would have 23 opportunities to get in front of groups and get their input. But I'm going to change the question a little bit. I think what is really unique is the position. I think the search process is a fairly standard search process, maybe with that one exception, the 23 sessions. But I think what is really unique about this is the position. And I don't think there's another position anywhere, and I would go so far as to say anywhere in the world comparable to this, in terms of the nature of the position, the challenges of the position, and not to be overlooked, the opportunities of the position. And I think it's the position that's unique more than it is probably the search process. Well,
I agree also with the outreach sessions to gain input to the position criteria and process. I found it to be amazingly complete. Now, I saw this as a nearly done document, and I looked through it, and I'm sitting in this position and can have some idea about the future. And I said, geez, I don't think they missed a beat on this. I thought it was very comprehensive, well done. You can rely on that position description in deciding whether it's right for you. And that's the best way to get the best candidates clearly aligned with what the thinking is of the organization. So some may have already reviewed the position description posted on the AACSB website and have read the desired characteristics and responsibilities of the next CEO. But what do you consider to be the most important qualities of the AACSB's next CEO, and what is the desired profile of the next leader?
Before I answer that directly, let me make one other statement. I'm glad you feel it's a comprehensive listing. I don't want people to be kind of scared off by it. It's a little bit overwhelming. Yes, but I would point out that of all the characteristics listed in there, what we say in there is we're looking for the individual with what we believe is the best combination of these. Doesn't necessarily mean every candidate that's successful and goes deep into the search is going to have every characteristic listed. It's virtually impossible for that to be the case. We wouldn't have any candidates, but we're looking for the right sort of combination of those characteristics, we think. The question you specifically asked, which of those are the most important? You probably get different answers from that from different members of the selection committee would be my guess. But I'm going to identify four that stand out for me as perhaps the most important. One is first and probably foremost is a deep commitment to improving management education worldwide. And that includes a strong commitment to continuing the globalization efforts that you more than anybody else are responsible for beginning and carrying through to where we are today. A deep commitment to improve management education is an absolute necessity, I think. Number two is a record of achievement. Now, that could have been accomplished in different places. We think it could be someone who's been very successful as an academic. Probably a former dean, but maybe not necessarily limited to that, but somebody whose success has been in the academic world. We also believe it could have been someone, could be someone who was, their record of achievement was earned in business and would be interested in making the transition from a business environment into an academic environment. And the third is and these are not listed in any kind of priority, is an individual who's been successful, a record of achievement in an association in management. That's basically your background. When you came to AACSB, that was your background. And so we know that works for AACSB, and that's another possibility. And the fourth is public service. An individual could have earned a record of achievement in some kind of public service. Could be others, but the background that an individual has, I think the selection committee would say, is not as important as having certain characteristics that could be achieved in any of those areas. I think communication and collaboration, ability and achievement is absolutely necessary. It's really interesting, and I think you would probably agree with this, to stand up in front of, let's say, 500 or 600 deans, knowing that what you're expected to do is to get them to agree on something. Now, that's a real challenge. These are very bright individuals. They run their own organizations. They're used to being leaders in charge. And as you know, a little over a year ago, we got, I think, the surprising outcome of unanimous votes on new standards for both business and accounting. Unanimous votes. And that's a real credit to the leadership of AACSB of being able to collaborate and communicate effectively in advance of that vote. But that's what's expected. I'm not sure that unanimous votes are necessarily expected, but that kind of collaboration and communication is expected. And then the fourth thing I would mention is the incoming CEO needs to lead this organization in modeling those three attributes that we expect the schools to demonstrate: innovation, impact, and engagement. If we're going to expect accredited schools to be innovative, to have an impact, and to be engaged, AACSB has to be as well. So I think those are some of the characteristics we'd be looking for.
Excellent. I would just add one. For those of you particularly that are coming from outside the industry and are interested in this job, you need to be a quick learner. As Jan said, this group is incredibly bright in a global context, and the staff is equally bright in the work that they complete. So you better learn quickly, because they'll pass you along the way. AACSB's more than 1,400 members span 6 continents. I think those are all the inhabited ones, right? We're not counting the penguins. With the number of accredited schools now over 700. Further, many AACSB events are being delivered in all regions of the world. With such a global organization, and getting more global, are there any particular experiences or backgrounds that you and the selection committee place more significant weight on than others?
Well, we have spent a lot of time talking about I'm just going to use the single word of globalization, the globalization initiatives and where we are today in AACSB, and the progress that's been made in the last 15 years. It's just dramatic, and it's really important that be continued and sustained. That's really the future of AACSB. Now, what experience does an individual need to have to sort of satisfy that requirement for the position? We have not been real specific on that at this point. We spent a lot of time speaking about it. There's a heavy emphasis on that in the position description, but it doesn't go to the level of defining exactly what kind of international experience there is. We feel like it's premature to do that at this point. We want to, again, cast a pretty wide net and see what kind of international experience people have in accreditation or otherwise. It could be international business experience as well. But it's clearly an important expectation. I will tell you this, in writing the position description and the ads that have gone out, we consider different words to attach to this. And a word that we thought about and rejected was appreciation. To have an appreciation for globalization, we said, no, that's not enough. That's too low a bar, and we did not use that word. And so it's a very important consideration, and one that clearly will be front and center as we begin to evaluate individual candidates. But we do think it could be that the international globalization background of an individual could have been achieved in a number of different ways.
I didn't say much about it when I was being recruited because I'm not sure this would have been a good attribute, but I had quite a bit of global experience as an internal auditor going back to 1980. And the irony was my first experience was far away in Singapore, where we now have our office. But I do think understanding cultures, I think most importantly, even when you're not familiar with a particular part of the world, that going in with a good listening and observing posture helps you to adapt quickly. People generally around the world want the same things, and it's not as difficult and not to crack as sometimes we think, but you've got to observe, you've got to listen and understand that people are different, trying to achieve most of the same end qualities of their life. What other groups, both internal and external, have been called on to provide input? I know you talked about the 23 groups of outreach, but has there been other groups that you felt probably don't fit into those outreach sessions that have helped the search?
Well, we've gotten input from a really large number of deans, because many of these 23 sessions did include in the audience a lot of deans. But there have been a lot of other representatives of universities who are not currently deans of business schools in those audiences as well. We've gotten before a number of international groups and gotten input there. Again, many of them deans or otherwise directly related universities. The board of directors has weighed in, again, a number of deans on that board, but others as well. We've had sessions with AACSB staff and have gotten some really good input from the staff. We'll continue to do that. And then the Business Practices Advisory Council. I found one of the more interesting sessions we had was with them that had a number of individuals there, representing different businesses that gave us some really valuable input. So those are the primary groups that we've gotten input from, other than just individual comments from different organizations, some limited, but some in involvement and discussions with other professional organizations.
Well, I want to get to the audience questions, so let's skip to the last prepared question and then move on. In concluding this part of the interview, is there anything else that you would like to add that you believe is relevant to business school leadership and or the CEO needs?
Well, I would go back to the statement I made earlier about this being a unique opportunity. There's just nothing comparable to this that I can think of anywhere. I don't think there are too many once-in-a-lifetime opportunities. I think that's kind of an overused phrase. We describe things as a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. They're probably not. And if somebody doesn't get a particular opportunity, there may be another one soon equal to that one or even better. I think this is unique. I think this is truly a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for people who have the right skill set and the right background, assuming we have an incoming CEO who's in that position, who knows how long, but I'm going to say 10 years. That would be 2 terms. It might be ideal, we think. For many people, this is truly a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. If 10 years from now would put them outside the range of being a candidate, they would no longer be a candidate. This is truly a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. So I would simply encourage qualified applications. And also, let us know people you think are qualified, and we will do the work needed to be done to try to get applications from those individuals.
Yeah. I love the comment about once in a lifetime, and that this is an absolute. We don't really mean that. But I recall back in late 1999, early 2000, when Bob Taylor, then chairman of the board, was trying to convince me to leave the number 2 position at the Institute of Internal Auditors to come here. And he told me the story of well, John, you think you may be president of IAA, but leadership changes, things change, and maybe there are different people and they select someone else. We're offering you this position now. And that convinced me that it was the right step. But I've always appreciated that counseling, because if not, but that clear message in my risk assessing nature, I might have not taken this opportunity, and it's been a wonderful experience. So let's turn to the questions from the audience. I always find them even more interesting. First has to do more with business school leadership. How can deans and faculty work together to effectively secure sustainability of a business school and the integrity of quality education? Pulling against each other, how can faculty be inspired to participate in extracurricular activities?
I'm going to focus more on the latter part of that question, how can faculty be inspired to participate in extracurricular activity? Because if in fact that occurs, I think the first part probably answers itself. First of all, I think faculty really look to its leadership or their leadership. So you've got to model it. If you want faculty to sort of behave in a certain way, want them to do certain things, I think you have to model that. And so I think the people in leadership positions, and that's not just the dean, but the higher level administration of a business school, need to really model the participation that you want to see from all faculty. And then faculty respond to incentives. I think everybody responds to incentives. And if faculty are expected to participate in a certain level of activity and they don't, and there are no implications of not having done that, then I think the incentive is not very strong. On the other hand, if there are certain rewards for participation of a certain kind, I think that tends to motivate participation. So that's maybe a long and difficult transition to make, but particularly as new faculty are hired, they need to be hired with the expectation that here are the set of activities we expect you to be involved in. And it may be a little bit more difficult to to overlay that expectation on existing faculty. It may take longer. It's a long transition period. But I think faculty need to understand what the expectations for them are. And then there's some carryover into the rewards that they get for being effective faculty members, including those expectations.
Yeah, the buy-in is certainly important, and that is incentives are critical. A viewer from India asks, this millennium faces many challenges, especially in the domain of sustainable development of emerging economies attempting to catch up with the developed world. What are the desired directions to which future managers should be educated in business schools, particularly in these economies, and how does business school leadership provide these directions?
I found this a really interesting question, and I knew it was coming, so I had a chance to think about this a little bit. And I thought, if I were hired, let's say, as a consultant to go into a developing country and consult with them on the design of business curriculum, what would I do? What would the principles underlying that be? And I came up with 5 things. The first one is individuals who will be successful in the future in business need to be broadly educated. There needs to be a broad education, and we can't fall into the trap of kind of limiting our education to those things that have direct and immediate applicability on the job when a student leaves the university. There's an old accreditation standard, no longer exists, was in place for a long time that, I've forgotten exactly how it was worded, but essentially what it required is that half of an undergraduate degree had to be taken outside of business. Right. And even though that's no longer a specific accreditation requirement, it's still a very common practice for 2 reasons. One, it was an accreditation requirement for a long time, and things changed slowly. But secondly, it's just the right thing to do, to broadly educate students. So that would be number one. Number 2 would be strong skill development as well as content. We tend to think about curriculum in terms of the subjects that we cover, but the development of skills, whether it's communication, leadership, analytical skills, technology skills, are really as important, if not more important, than the specific content. So there should be a significant element of skill development in any effective curriculum, I think. And number 3 would be to understand basic business functions. Students who get business degrees need to understand, I'll probably leave some out, need to understand finance and accounting and marketing and logistics and strategy and the various areas of economics that we teach. The next one I think is a real challenge, and one that I don't know that I feel like we've done a great job on, even in developed countries, much less developed countries, and that is how all those pieces fit together. How do those various functional areas of business come together in a business environment? I think all of us have some work to do on that one. And then last, I would say that a lot of this learning can be done through experience. And we need to build into curricula, and if I were developing a curriculum in a developing country, it would be get the students out of the classroom and give them an opportunity to learn some of this through experience, or to confirm the learning in the classroom through experience on the outside the classroom. So that would sort of be my simple formula. Not very simple to implement, but of what they'll be doing.
Comprehensive and well aligned. What role does leadership play in instilling in deans and faculty the importance of good governance, ethics, human values, especially in the preparation of future managers?
Well, I probably beginning to repeat myself a little bit. If we want certain things to happen, then as leaders we have to model those. And so I think we simply have to model for faculty and students what we expect them to do and what we expect them to be. But leadership in a business school really needs to work hard on collaboration among faculty members. Individual faculty members can't simply do what they're interested in kind of on their own in isolation. It takes a very strong collaborative effort, and we need to make that happen. I think effective business school leaders have to be engaged with business more so than in the past. And that's why the engagement part of the 2013 standards is in there, to really make that an emphasis of our business schools. Principle of AACSB for a long time has been continuous improvement, just continually monitoring improvement. And you have that happen in 5-year increments with the accreditation reviews. And so I think AACSB accreditation is really important in terms of I hate to say forcing, but in terms of monitoring and the expectation of continuous improvement. And I think any dean that's going to be effective in business school, accredited or otherwise, needs to really be focused on what represents continuous improvement, and are we continuously improving. Maybe 5-year segments are good, even if you're not accredited, to monitor that.
A viewer asks, one of the expectations of the new CEO mentioned within the position description posted on the website is expanding AACSB's global reach and influence. How is the selection committee assessing the candidate's potential for accomplishing such a goal?
Well, at this particular point in time, I can say we're not yet, because we're not evaluating candidates yet. This will become a major consideration, though. We mentioned that earlier. I think it's a significant issue. We've made significant outreach worldwide, and we'll continue to do that. We have strong international representation on the selection committee. As far as exactly how we're going to evaluate international experience, we simply aren't to the point of doing that yet. And we wanted to keep it broad, because we don't want candidates limiting or saying, I'm not going to apply for this because I'm not sure my experience in terms of international or anything else stacks up against what they're looking for. We want it to be broad at this point, because we want to have the opportunity to look at a broad range of international kinds of experiences.
I think that's a real important message, and that individuals that watch this live or recorded version should keep in mind. This isn't where you have to score 100 on the test, but it is a good scope of attributes that would be appropriate for the next CEO. How big of a factor does a candidate's business experience play in the search process in light of AACSB's increasing engagement with corporate and industry members?
Well, increased engagement with business is clearly important. A couple of evidences of that. One is the fairly recent appointment of the Business Practices Advisory Council, and that group is up and running, and I think becoming an effective part of the AACSB structure. Engagement is a very strong emphasis in the 2013 accreditation standards in both business and accounting. So clearly it's important. In a CEO, I think we expect significant experience in some key areas of business. The ones that stand out for me are strategy, that is strategic planning and follow through on a strategic plan, financial management, and human resources. The CEO of AACSB has got to have experience in at least those 3 areas, and they're areas that business is strong in. Now, does that mean that that makes the next CEO needs to come from business? We think that's one of the possible places where those business functions can be demonstrated, or success in those business functions can be demonstrated, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the next CEO should come from business. But we're certainly open to considering individuals from business. But the main thing is that they have experience and success in these sort of key areas that are associated really with business. And for me, strategic planning, financial management, and human resources would be at least 3 of those. And then success in reaching out with business from whatever position income the person has, whether it's an association executive who's reached out into business, that would be a very desirable attribute. Whether it's a university, a dean of a business school who's reached out and effectively connected with business, that we will certainly look at those, and that'd be we place a high value on that experience.
Well, this is the final question from our audience, and the final question of the day. With AACSB swiftly expanding global membership, how do you see the CEO's role evolving in the next few years, considering the increased worldwide membership? And you've touched on this in a number of areas, so if there's any summation comments that you'd like to make.
Well, I'm not sure there's a whole lot new to say. I mean, you've done a lot of international travel yourself, but I think the incoming CEO needs to plan to do more. Needs to simply plan to be to be very flexible in terms of schedule. And of course, that means that at the AACSB office, there need to be people in place that keep this organization effectively running in the CEO's absence. I think the CEO is probably going to need to be more involved internationally than even you have been in the future. And I think needs to be open to how we best serve different regions. I think the recent announcement that was made just very recently about the European office is a signal. It's a very strong signal, and there are other areas of possible offices in the future. And I'm not in a position, don't even know exactly what they are, but we will continue to consider other locations as well as Singapore now and in Europe and other locations, and then ways to serve AACSB member schools and business education in general in areas where we don't have physical presence at the present time. So the incoming CEO needs to see that as a major part of his or her responsibility.
Well, thank you, Jan, and happy hunting.
Thank you.
Well, I just have one thing to say about this. People ask me who should be the next CEO, and I say the best candidate, and we'll certainly do our best to find the best one. I want to add, we have another position that will be announced very soon. As Jan mentioned, we're opening an office in Europe, and we are recruiting a senior vice president and chief officer for a super region, the Europe, Middle East, and Africa. So if you're interested in that position, then we encourage you to apply too, and we'll give it its just review. I want to thank you all for tuning in to this very interesting and somewhat unusual session of ENL. We appreciate the global participation, and we appreciate always Jan's efforts in this session. Please stay tuned to learn about our topic and guests for the next broadcast of ENL. We have so many exciting topics that we're trying to present to you. We're trying to work on what is the most important at this time. But we'll be back to you in August, and thank you and good day.